This is a regular meeting of the Rules Committee of the Representative Town Meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order.
Frank's here.
Ah, welcome, Frank.
You should let Mark
The
know.
first,
Mark, Frank just walked in.
Mark Frank just walked in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. First item on the agenda is approving the minutes for April 4, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve, please? Thank you. Now, let's see. I got a Joe moving. And a second?
Second.
There we go. All right, Mike's seconding, Castle. Any corrections, additions, deletions? I am seeing, hearing none. All right, we're ready to vote. Okay, are there any no votes? I see and hear none. Any abstentions? Thank you, Lois. None?
Hey, Seth,
Motion, yes, yes.
Oh.
Adele.
go ahead and finish your sentence.
No, that was a joke between me and Mrs. Snyder. Go ahead.
Well, can we
Okay,
finish it?
I was just gonna say,
That's what I'm gonna
could,
do.
how
Adele had a
about,
question.
since just a few of us are online, could you, but we can't see who's there other than you. So is there any chance of just letting everybody know who's there?
Well, yes, we did.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Ah, there's Ann. Hi. Okay, so in the room here, we have Jack Davis and Frank Kemp and Joe and Michael Caslow and
Teresa.
everybody, Teresa
This is there, yeah.
and
Mike Wheeler.
Mike
and Mike Wheeler and me.
Thank you.
Can we finish our vote?
Yes, we're about to do that. Thank you very much. Now, are there any abstentions? I see none. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is just announcements. There is the bill that allows us to have both a virtual meeting and a face-to-face meeting is expiring on April 30th. And there is now pending before, there's been a bill which supports continuing with a hybrid situation that's been passed by the House, the Substitute House Bill 5269. That bill is being considered by the State Senate, and they have until Friday to act, or the old act expires and you could only have then face-to-face meetings. It would not allow for electronic hybrid meetings. So we'll see where that
The bill that's going to the Senate now extends it until when?
let me see.
One of the things for the TV 79, the way the mics are set up, they're not used to recording people in the audience. They make everybody come over here to talk. So when you're going to speak loud, because that's the only microphone serving TV 79, which is the primary recording vehicle for this meeting. I'm not recording it on GoToMeeting.
I think I can answer that question. Tell me if I'm speaking too softly. This bill is being moved by both sides of the aisle because they felt that virtual meetings increase the participation of the public in local government. As such, it does not have an expiration date. It's going to allow for hybrid meetings. Now, the ins and outs of what that hybrid meeting means and how, I haven't read the bill, so I can't answer that. But Lois has.
Well,
Seth, Lois has got her hand up.
yes, Lois.
I was just gonna indicate that I looked through the bill, and I know I sent it to Seth, that it has a section in there about voting, that's just what we're doing now.
Right. They didn't change anything from what was already in place, if they pass it. So, that's the only other announcement that I had was, I got in touch with Jim Cameron to talk about FOIA, how to put some sort of a presentation together on FOIA, and also something on Robert's Rules of Order. We discovered a number, on YouTube, a number of presentations on Robert's Rules, different segments. Haven't had a chance to review all of them yet to see which ones would be applicable, but it looks like that part might possibly be done, that you could just simply post those up on the town portal and make them available to everybody. The other part is that we might invite a gentleman down from Hartford who's on the FOIA, he's the head of the FOIA committee, and he has a presentation. Might have him come before the RTM, make a presentation, record it, and then have that available on the portal for FOIA questions. So that's sort of where we're at now, and hope to have that in more detail fairly quickly. Okay, thank you. Good, yes, Lois.
And the announcements, you're gonna talk about the Blight Committee?
No, I wasn't going to address that tonight. We have a person on the
I thought we
Blight
assigned them
Committee.
at the last meeting.
Yeah, we put somebody on the Blight Committee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean Blight, I meant, ethics. You were gonna summarize where you ended up with the ethics discussion with,
Well, ethics, it turns out that a person, as long as they, even though they've resigned from the RTM, as long as they are an elector of the town, and that means they're living in town, can continue to serve out their time on the committee. So that's covered. We don't have to put anybody on ethics.
thank you, that's what I meant,
Oh.
sorry.
No,
Sorry for the
no problem.
And the person who has resigned has stated they wish to continue on ethics?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, that was me and
Yeah.
Hitler, yes.
No, I understand, but that's an
Now you were
important
putting that on
part of
the,
state.
I got you, yeah, correct. Okay, so those are two announcements I had for you. The next item is assigning committees for 3 members from District 2. So, Michael, you?
I got it. So we added the 3 members to replace Liz Bacon, Stacy, and a third, and Mia Handler. We had several vacancies in District 2, filled them, and last week Mike and I assigned them based on their preference sheets. So we have added Emily Salmore to PZ&H, Charles Tescher to F&B, and Katie Vanovitch to Public Health and Safety. If anyone wants to see resumes, Mike was good enough to bring them, so I have a copy, but we put that together pretty quickly. It was pretty clear where their skills were, where their interests were, and where we had vacancies in District 2.
And in 2, they replaced the person on the committee who had left.
That's right.
All right. And,
Where did Emily go, did you say?
Emily
You said
went to PZ&H.
yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And she'll take Liz Bacon's place.
Normally, putting somebody on F&B in the middle of the term could be a question, but most of the work of F&B for this year on the budget's been done, as I understand it. And so there's no problem with having Charles join F&B.
Thank you for speaking for F&B. That's not necessarily true, but
Well, I spoke to you earlier about it, Jack,
No,
that something changed.
the fact is there's still a lot of work to be done in preparing.
Oh, I
the
see what you're saying, okay.
presentation.
Mhm.
The work is not done.
Yeah.
We did a vote. That's what we did.
Okay, that's what I meant. All right. Any further comments? Okay, so can we have a motion then to put those individuals from District 2 on the committees assigned?
I'll make that move, Seth.
I have a motion from Mark and a second from Frank. Great. Any no votes? Any abstentions? I see none. Ready to vote? We are ready to vote. Therefore, that item passes unanimously. Yes.
One request. Can you guys provide the email of each of the individuals to the committee chair so we have a way of contacting them?
Yeah, they've all set up the standard Darien CT.gov emails, but we can email them to you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right.
May I ask a question there? I'm sorry, just to confirm, I'm sorry, it's Krista, that Mike, are you contacting the other chairs for NH and Public Health and Safety? I want to just close the loop on that.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Next item is setting the agenda for the RTM budget meeting. And what I'll do is recognize Jack to talk about it, because this is primarily an F&B show.
I'm going to go over here so I don't have to shout. I was looking at the proposed agenda, and so the first thing we have to do is take the appropriation of $2.9 million from the unassigned fund balance to fund capital projects, blah, blah, blah. And that has to be our first resolution of the night, because we need that to balance everything else that's coming afterwards. If we don't vote on that, then we can't vote on the capital, because that's being used to pay for the capital. So
that goes first.
That
Okay.
goes first. So that becomes 2211. And in reality, F&B is the only
Primary, yeah, and
primary,
probably
and the only
one
committee on that. So I don't know if you want to move that and vote on that individually, or just do the whole sheet and vote on the whole.
I'd like to do the whole sheet if everybody's okay with that.
Whatever your preference was, just checking. Okay, next is 2212A, pardon me. And it's the appropriation from the capital reserve for capital non-recurring expenditures. I have yet to figure out how to not have the glasses fog. Non-recurring expenditures. And that F&B is primary, will provide an overall reconciliation. But then each of the various committees, including education, would report on their capital, with the exception of anything that we voted on in ARPA, you don't have to report on, we've already addressed those. And there's 3 items that are being bonded, which is the Board of Ed track for about $600,000 and about $750 or someplace in that range for sidewalks, which, you know, Public Health and Safety or Public Works would typically both report on, but those 3 items are off the table. We will be addressing the bonding on those in our June meeting. So, but everything else that's in Public Works, everything else Park and Rec, Education and that, has a capital report on 2212A.
Now, are they going to be, I mean, what they would be reporting on is mostly finance, right? I mean.
No, they're going to report on what the projects are. I'm not touching them.
All right.
I'm going to say, here's how we're paying for it, here's what was requested last year, here's how we addressed it, here's the numbers overall, and, but, you know, I may touch on one or two other things saying these are being bonded to talk about that, but other than that, I'm not really getting into the detail on the project. So,
All right.
like Adele
All right.
will talk about that there's an extra 100,000 on the tennis courts, or if there's a public works truck, then obviously Ralph would talk about
Right.
those. So the details of what they're and what they want to talk about is up to them, but I'm just doing high-level financials, comparison year-to-date, and part of the explanation of how we're paying for this.
Right.
Because we started with about $9 million or so of capital, we're down to this, and it didn't magically dissipate. Most of the projects are there, with the exception of the Wheat Beach project, which nobody has to talk about because it was withdrawn. And I'm not even using it in the starting numbers. The next is 2212B, which is the approval of the Selectmen's budget. Again, I'm talking high level. So we'll talk about really the four component parts, which is the Board of Selectmen operating, the library grant, because it's really included in there, the debt, at which time we'll present a slide that was used at the Board of Finance that shows how debt is going down over the next 5 years of about 30 million. We'll talk about what debt and interest, which we always do at that time, and we'll talk about the transfer to the capital fund, which accounts for the capital that's there. Again, it's just an overall number. Depending upon how Kate and I do get together, this is an interesting budget year because there is a change in accounting. So I'll briefly talk about the change in accounting of what we're doing. Also, the Board of Finance Chair came before us in December and mentioned that core growth should be 2.5 and overall growth should be 3. And both of these budgets are coming in over 3.25%, and that was never reconciled. So what I'm trying to do is meet with Rich and with Kate to show, first of all, whether or not 2.5 was even reasonable, which I don't think it was based upon just the core increase in healthcare and fuel and other normal things that we bought, that just the prices all went up. But just so that people are aware, because I've heard this mentioned before, the 7.5 inflation that I've heard mentioned at various things, especially in the Board of Ed, has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Because most of the drivers of that inflation number that comes to 7.5 do not affect town or Board of Ed budgets. All right? We're not buying food. The cars we buy are minimal. The Board of Ed has locked in their fuel, so it's not affecting them. It does affect on the town side. So when you deconstruct the 7.5 inflation, has nothing to do with why this is driving. So I do want to get into what the drivers are on the Board of Selectmen. After that, again, each of the committees would talk about their respective budgets.
All right, I'll get a hold of them and make sure they're prepared.
Right. And it can be simple, all right?
Well,
But, I mean, they're responsible. I'm not getting into what's going on in Public Works. I'm not getting what's going on in Park and Rec. That's there. I'm talking the total overall, here's what's happening and what's happened there. We get into 2212C, and on this one, education is primary.
yep.
F&B is secondary. They can discuss their budget. We're going to discuss the drivers of the budget. So like one of the things sort of caught me by surprise is that one of the major drivers of this budget increase happens to be that there's 8 or 9 new FTEs. And that's driving why it went up by that. There's other factors that are going in there, certain new programs and other things like that that we can talk about. And there are some costs that did go up, but those are the drivers. So when we talk about it, we're going to talk about what the drivers of this are, as well as some of the concerns. Because I'm going to tell you, F&B isn't happy with the 3.7% operating increase in either of the two operations, all right? And I'll tell you my joke here, because I'm not going to say it in the RTM meeting. You remember when your mom told you that two wrongs don't make a right? Well, this year, we had too high of a Board of Selectmen operating budget. We had too high of a Board of Ed budget, but because we didn't properly record revenue for the current year's budget, which F&B did suggest that certain things be added, but they weren't, and we've had the good fortune of Park and Rec really blowing it out of the water, which is a good thing again on their programs, and we're down on staff so that in reality our expenses are down, so we're almost saving $2.5 million coming back in on the Board of Ed budget, Board of Selectmen budget. And let's remember, when we net revenue against that, this isn't a big budget. You got to take away the debt, you got to take away the capital from that 50 million, and when you net revenue, we're almost getting 10% back on that budget. That's not good. That's not good budgeting. But because of all these three wrongs, we're able to pay down all these high things. Oh, and the grand list went up by a significant amount, generating about $2 million.
That's not bad.
Right, that's a good thing.
What percentage did the grand list go up, Jack, do you recall?
I have to look, it's either 1 or 2%, but it's like the highest I've seen for like forever. And we're still having other things coming online. So when you're looking at all these things, we're able to pay it down. So we end up with a 2% increase in the mill rate. And so even if F&B was to come and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, nobody cares. So it's a little bit of frustration, but if we're looking at further budgeting going down the road, this isn't good business practice to continue the financial strength that this town has. So that's my basic joke, that three wrongs made a right.
Well, what it shows is that you have a one-time anomaly, if I can use that word, which offsets, hides maybe?
No, Seth,
Nah,
that's not true. We've been watching what the revenue
No.
has been on what we record. We tend to be very conservative on our expenses and very conservative on our revenue. But F&B has been challenging the recording of revenue, saying it's too low. And part of the thing is we have a grand list, so if you're off on revenue, it's okay. We can always make that transfer out from the grand list. That's part of the general fund, it's part of the reason why it's there. In addition, which we'll get to later, when you calculate out the taxes, there's a little bit of wiggle room there, rightfully so, but there's some wiggle room, which comes in. So anyhow, on 12C, education, they go first, F&B will go afterwards. Then we go to 2212D, which shows that people can add, because basically it adds 12 B and C and says, here's the number. So in the past, when we were all together doing Kumbaya in prior years, F&B moved it, and then we did a voice vote. We didn't even have to record it. It was just voice vote, because basically we know how to add, hopefully. Then we get to the approval 2212E. I have my glasses back on because I made this far too small for me to read. We get to E, which is approval of the mill rate. So we're going to go back over the mill rate because we're going to do analysis of here's where we started by moving this, by paying for this, by going to ARPA here. Now, here's how we got to this mill rate, all right? Then we get to the fact that we adjust the grand list. This is where we'll talk about the grand list, that we make an adjustment to the grand list. And some of the adjustments are some of the credits that we give to veterans, some of the things that come in from the state, our volunteers that are working, they will get credits. There's some other adjustments and other things that go on there. And there was a change in the methodology because we were accounting in prior years for too high of a credit. And Kate and Jen, which they always do by reviewing all this stuff on an annual basis, made the determination that we were giving too much of a credit there from what we were actually doing, so they lowered it, which in fact will reduce some of that cushion that we have next year, but it's the right thing to do, and I fully trust what they've done, and have reviewed it with them. But then what we do is we take the last 5 years' collection rate, come up with an average, and then take 25 basis points off. Now, 25 basis points doesn't sound like a lot, but you gotta remember what it's on. This is big money that we're talking about here. The reason for it is twofold. Number one, we can never guarantee that we're gonna get the collection rate on an annual basis. We're up 99+%, so we're in very good shape. But the other thing is, during the course of the year, adjustments are made to the grand list. So there's a really good analysis that Jen does on an annual basis that shows the historic use of what we put for a budgeted grand list, and then what the grand list was for the taxes that we actually sent out bills on. And they're never the same. It can't be, because we do adjustments in February and that. So sometimes a little higher,
Question on the screen.
sometimes a little lower, so that we'll talk about in there. Who had the question? Patty?
Yes, Jack. Will you be sending this information out in advance? Like, will everybody be able to get a packet or get it all online so they can review all of this in advance, and it could perhaps be covered a little bit more quickly?
I don't know if that was in my contract and based upon the pay raise they gave me to do this. It's a lot of work. I did that
Well, if you do the work, I'll do the Xerox.
It's not a Xerox. It's tying in each of the forms, getting the information and going from there, and I have to have all of this validated by Kate, Jen, and Rich. So I need for their turnaround, and remember, people don't work here on Fridays, even though I will say that I do get responses from Kate and Jen when they're not supposed to be working. Sorry. I will try, but, and as I did 3 years ago, I sent out a full package on the reconciliation, but it's a lot of work. And so I will get what I get together out, but some of this, I'm not going to give you my commentary out on it. I'm going to give charts and analysis for what will be shown, if I can get to it, if I can get to it.
If you can do charts and analysis so people can review it up front, so that if they have questions, I think that would be great.
I would appreciate it, but, you know, unlike everyone else, you know, F&B wasn't the only people supposedly looking at this budget to review and analyze it, and all of the Board of Finance meetings have been televised. So while I'm more than happy to spoon feed, I will try and get what I can get done. So, and get it out to them. It may be the high level, but some of the other charts that I work out with Kate may not be in that initial package, but I'm trying to get this stuff out. Because.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's good.
So we'll talk about the mill rate, because there's various component parts on the mill rate. And I'm, you know, trying to keep some of this simple, but we should explain what's going on. The next thing is the authorization for borrowing for $500,000 based upon future tax receipts.
5 million.
5 million, rather. If you read what we have here, F&B's the only one on that one as well as primary. So if you read, this is a standard resolution that is raised to 10 million 2 years ago during, due to unknowns associated with the pandemic, but moved back to 5 million for the current tax year, fiscal year 22 budget. The town has never drawn on this authorization. That essentially, even though there'll be more verbiage associated with it, the standard, that's going to be my report. It's going to be that simple. Same thing on the next one. the authorization of appropriations for other funds, which is G. F and B is I'm sorry, F. Oh no, I'm talking about 13, sorry. 2212G is how we fund all the other funds. There's a new fund this year because, again, in June, based upon, again, Park and Rec blowing the socks off on their programs, they have more expenses than what they've given appropriation. So at our June meeting, we're going to have to do what we did last June by increasing their appropriation so they can pay for the programs that they've sold, all right? So this doesn't become an annual event. A number of years ago when we first did the initial accounting change, they had an account on the balance sheet, but it wasn't a fund, just an account, and they'd net this and then move it in at the end of the year. That really wasn't good accounting. So they then tried to do the income and the revenue, and we're having to go and do an appropriation in June every year. That's not good accounting either. So what we're going to do is we set up a special revenue fund that we're setting up this year to start next year, July 1st. And all the revenue and all the expenses that they need will go into that fund. And at the end of the year, it sweeps out into revenue, and they have a number in the revenue side from the special revenue fund for Park and Rec, so we don't have to come back and approve appropriations. So we will talk that that's the new fund from the Reserve Recreation Program Fund, which has $950,000 in it. If anybody wants to talk on the sewer fund or on the parking lot fund, or Adele wishes to discuss the Park and Rec fund any greater than what I just did, they can do it.
I spoke to them, they said they'd have, they would keep it short, but.
That's fine, that's fine, because I don't typically get into sewer funds. Although I am doing bumper stickers that we support our
Sometimes I
sewers.
wish I did
I've been asked for those now. So that wraps up that aspect. The next thing is 1213, which is an appropriation for 55 million plus that says that the Board of Finance can refinance or use general funds to pay down debt, which we've done before. But it's only for those that are available, because sometimes when we issue a bond, you cannot refinance for a certain number of years. So it's only those that are available. So this has consistently decreased or increased. The number changes. I think last year was 65 mil. So brief explanation of what it is, and then we're done with that. And again, basically what you're reading there may be what the report that I'm reading, even though there'll be a much larger report that I'm not reading the whole thing on. So it'll be in the file, the record,
Okay.
but it's going to be real short. All right? Now, what we need here, though, to explain all of what's going on is an intro. And part of it is talking about what I talked about, that we've had changes of accounting. We have operating budgets that are far too high. We have to discuss what's happening at the end of the current year that's generating about $660,000 from the Board of Ed. Only $590 is from the ECR, but and that's based upon a higher rate return. That we have some revenues coming in about I always forget which one is what, 1.3 versus 1.2. But one side of it is 1.3 for either increasing revenues, expenses. The other side is we've had a lot of retirements, specifically over in the police department. And because of that, it takes time for us to hire new people. It's very hard to get police officers, and we've done a very good job, no matter how good of a police force this is, and it is a very good one. But it does take time, and like anything else which happens in the Board of Ed situation, is that you may have a more experienced teacher retire or leave the system, and you're bringing in an equivalent person at a lower grade. So you pay them less. So there's some action that goes on there.
So that's generating about a $1.2 million savings in expenses. So we have to explain all this. We have to explain that our grand list went up. And this is like it to start. So I've touched on some of it during the report, but this is sort of setting the story. I believe.
So we want to start with the intro, right?
Right, but
Okay.
I wanted to go through all that to say, look, this is all this stuff in here, but things move faster because in reality, we're telling a story here. What happened during this budget year? How did the current year affect this budget year? This is the story. So those are some of the things that we'd be talking about, some of the reconciliations, and that sets the tone, which then allows us going through, so it's not the first time somebody's hearing what's going on. Also that they decided to take $2.9 million from the general fund. And a little bit of education again, we talked about it in February, but we're going to continue to do that, is that at a minimum, the Board of Finance doesn't want to be less than 12% of what our revenues are. And we try to be at least 15%, which is the goal that we want to be. But really, the best number is 16.5%. And with moving to 2.9, not that it's heresy that we're going to go and lynch our Board of Finance for doing this, but we could have gone a little bit less, and we ended up about 16.4%. Now, again, some of the numbers of what we're estimating to come in is estimates, so we'll have a better idea of that. But some of those things we have to talk about the grand list, we have to talk, because these are all the component parts that F&B and the Board of Finance and all of us talk about on an ongoing basis, because that's how we ended up with a 2.3%. We also took, which I was very happy with, we talked about the capital reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, and they have a capital reserve in there, which 2 years ago we had facilitated cleaning up with the Board of Finance because we thought there were a lot of projects that just shouldn't be there anymore. And they're using some of that to pay down the capital, which is good because, I know that Jim, and rightfully so, likes keeping his powder dry on that for things that might come up, but neither one of us wanted to be too high either. So it's finding the balance over there, and they found the balance by moving $100,000 out. So some of that is just setting the tone, setting the pace, and setting the story so that it's going to be, you're going to hear about this later, but here's what happened, you're going to hear about this later. Here's the number, Again, F&B during the last reval started to focus on something else. What's requested? Because what is requested is the numerator. We don't control the denominator of figuring out the mill rate. That's the grand list. We don't have input,
Right.
nor does any elected official have input into what that denominator is. But the numerator we do. And so we started doing that, and part of the reason is that our taxes, I think, went up 3% that year. But if you looked at what was requested by the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen, their increase was only 2%. It was that we lost, our grand list went down that year, that resulted in a higher tax increase, but really our two operating budgets were very good. So we've continued on that thrust of looking at what's requested, and we'll try and do a reconciliation of that as well, because that's where we're starting at. What are you requesting? Okay, how do we pay for this? Okay, this is how we went here. And that's basically it from the budget. So,
Did you do a reconciliation on the cost side when they closed the books on 21-22?
we have in the past, we started this year on the Board of Ed. We had a conversation come in, and Dr. Adley and Duke were able to come in October, and we talked about what happened in the prior year's budget. And I have to say, F&B has a little bit of an advantage on this, because there's several programs that they've implemented over the last couple of years, and unless it gets on a Board of Ed agenda, they can't talk about it. But when they're in our meeting, we can say, okay, 2 years ago we did this, how's that working? What are you finding? What are you learning from that? And that was a lot of what the conversation was. We want to do the same for the Board of Selectmen. And, you know, even in the intro, we may touch on a couple of other things, because as I was just talking to Joe, you know, we talk about a unassigned general fund of $28 million or so, all right? So everybody thinks we only have $28 million. No! We got 50, 60 million. We just did a debt thing, so that goes into a special debt fund until we pay down whatever we took the debt for, repaid, or on the school, we're waiting until the bills come in till we're paying that off. So that's in a special fund. We have the capital accounts where we're moving all this money in, and the projects are there. Some of them take over a year to get done, so that's there. We have other investment accounts and other things going on. Even little things. During the time of the pandemic, the cafeteria fund, the Board of Ed had to find sources to replenish that fund so it's not in deficit. And it was in deficit going into this year. And I'm happy to report, based upon the March numbers, it's back to being healthy again. So just on some of the other funds that are there, I just want to mention, like, here's some other funds. We don't vote on it on the budget, but they're there in this town. And so this one's healthy, that's going here, that's going there. And one of the things that we asked to do a number of years ago, and it's been implemented by Kate, is that, if you recall, F&B did a joint project with the Board of Finance and Jen to clean up some of the reserve funds. So one of those funds are going to be cleaned up this year, which is the special ed fund is going to be closed out for $100,000, because $100,000 wasn't going to resolve any special ed project nowadays. So that's being closed out back into the general fund. And then there's some other transactions that are going on, but they provide a list of where all those fund balances are. So at the end of the year, so we know what it is, so that nothing's going out, and we can clean up anything that's out there. So I may just mention some of those, just the key ones, not all of them, to go. And then some people know that I am looking during the course of this coming July 1st to address the false alarm funds, which may mean that nobody ever comes to my house if they're a policeman or a fireman again. But yes, I'd like to address and see if we can have a change on that to be more consistent with what other towns are doing at this time, but still provide both of those commissions with some funding. So
It's a lot of work, Jack.
We
A
get
lot of
there.
work.
We have a good team.
Well, there is a lot of complexity to this. And in the good old days, if I can use that term, when we first started doing budgets here in town, we used to get a mimeographed, and the different RCs were in different color sheets. And so that's changed. This is the largest budget in the history of the town. And it is complex, but if you're going to understand it, you've got to take the time to explain it. And so I congratulate you for doing as much as you've done in the amount of time, because there's a lot to it. My only suggestion would be sit in your desk, put a stopwatch in front of you, and go through it one time and just see what you got. So you got a target, some sense of where you go.
It's going to depend upon what charts we can get, all right? Because I do think it's very important, because everybody heard that oh my gosh, the budget's up 9% and everything at the beginning of the year, and now we end up with a mill rate increase of 2%. The guidance that we had was not on the mill rate. it was on the operating budgets, all right? Again, F&B's position, I don't mean to speak for the entire team, but at least I can say my position is, I don't care if capital goes up by 100%. Don't care. Because it's infrastructure and investment in our town. And so if we don't do it this year, for the most part, there's a couple of projects that I would say, why the heck are we doing this? If we don't do it this year, for the most part, we're going to be doing it in the future years. The question is whether or not we have the right price there. I should also add, and I've said...
It's the right project, to your earlier point. If
Yes.
it's the right project.
Yes. I should add also, in the 15 or so years, I'm never sure how long I've been on the RTM anymore, so I just keep on saying 15 years again. Unfortunately, I'm not getting any younger when I'm saying that. But this is the first year that I've ever seen the Board of Selectmen have a net addition to the town administrator's budget. Now, I could agree if these are essential things, but even in my conversation with some of my associates on the Board of Selectmen, they said, yeah, these are nice to have. But again, you know, when you're having a 2.3% increase in the mill rate, who cares? You can't even make an adjustment or a suggestion to it because nobody's really interested. I got a 2.3% in mill rate increase instead of the 9% I heard about. This is a good budget year. Well, that was part of the reason we got there. We had ARPA money, we had monies coming in, we had an increase in the grand list. We took some money out of the some other funds, and we're bonding about 1.3 million. And you know, at the end of the day, you end up where you end up.
And the grand list is going to keep going up, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Are there questions for Jack? Frank?
Jack, if you're asked about a question about...
Frank, real loud, because that's the only microphone we have.
Jack, if you're asked a question about the change of the grand list, I know you're not responsible for that, but what can be the general response to that? You said it went down.
No, when
it
we
went
did
up.
the reval a number of years ago, if you recall, because property values went down, the grand list went down.
Yeah.
All right? So it's
Yes,
market driven.
From all we hear about real estate prices and sales going up because of COVID.
It has gone up.
It seems to be an
The grand list has gone up.
anomaly that it's gone down.
It's not going down. The grand list has gone up.
No. I was talking about, we started something a number of years ago during the last reval because the grand list went down.
Back
Now
then.
we've been going up since that time. Okay? But just an interesting little aside for folks, just so that everybody understands the grand list. You have $1 million home and it sells for $2 million. No effect on the grand list until we do a reval.
Right.
You do an addition to your house, well, all of a sudden market rates may hit you because it's not just what that addition was. So that's new buildings that we've done. When you're seeing these three developments going on, you got to remember, some of that grand list goes down because all the personal property is no longer in that building, the building's there, and the only thing you're left with is land.
Buildings have been torn down.
Yep, until you start building again, and then it's like, I one time did some evaluation for mortgage, commercial mortgage lending. Then, you know, you have these experts who come in, and we have several in this building, that come in and say, you're about 40% done on this, so this is worth about this much, and they negotiate, and by the way, that becomes your new taxes for that particular building. It's an art, it's a science, but, and I'm always impressed by those who are capable of doing that. And we have somebody who's very good in our in our town who's very good in negotiating that. But just don't think that because a house sells, that grand list is going up, because it doesn't.
Until the revamp.
Nope. Change your bathroom.
So can I ask a question?
All right, yes.
Oh, stand up and give it. So granted, it's not a conversation for this budget season, but in the event we end up talking about Great Island in our June meeting, I assume we're going to talk about that impact of that coming off the grand list, potentially?
I would imagine if a sale goes on, all right, that F&B, as well as other committees that are assigned, will be looking at all various aspects of that, including what the debt service would be, what impact it might have on future operating budgets, what the effect of the of losing it off the tax rolls are, and every other financial aspect that we can think of, as well as, and I'm going to be very honest because I've said this before, so I might as well be on the public record because I've made this comment enough. If in fact this comes to fruition, I am hoping that the Board of Selectmen do not come and tell us what they're going to do with it. Because any decision they're making now is the wrong decision. That's somebody who's done business development in their professional career. I'd like them to tell me what we might do with it. I'd also like to have a board of trustees with some very innovative people on that to figure out what the business propositions might be for the various aspects on it, as opposed to people who say, no, I want to have people figure out how do we get this done. It's a different mindset than doing it. And understand, I ran greenhouse groups, so that was part of what I used to do is, oh, how can we do it? Oh, that's a barrier, okay, we can go over, we can go under, So a group of people in town, this town is very capable of having that. But so that's there, because I don't think anybody should be telling us what we will do with that until you really have time to evaluate and go from there. And I'm not saying one way or another of where I am with it. I will tell you that as happened with Highland Farms, I know that Seth was contacted early, I was contacted earlier, so that we knew that something was there. We are not privy to the executive session conversations, nor do I want to be. I mean, I had to hide that book in my house so nobody else saw it. But the town is doing it the right way. That's the only thing I can say. And if it does come, well, I don't think it'll make the June meeting. But if it does come, then I promise that everybody will be looking at it with very strong fine-tooth combs.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, any other questions for, yes,
I would assume that you're about ready to ask everybody to vote on the
Thank you.
agenda for the next meeting. And as you do that, I realize, the agenda says that we will be meeting, that the RTM will be meeting in person.
right,
I just want to be, and I realize you're doing that because you don't have a choice, because you don't know whether the rules are going to change or not.
right.
Between now. So anyway, my question is,
Welcome to my
what are we doing
shoes.
to let people know? What are we doing to let people know right away, because they've been voting remotely and they're expecting to vote remotely? So. that's my
Right.
question.
As soon as I know, I will send an email to the RTM, everybody. As it is now, when we post this agenda, we'll note that it is in person, because that's what it is for now. And if they vote in time, then we'll be able to do a hybrid by the time the meeting rolls around, May 9. The current permission to be able to do this,
We won't be able to do a hybrid for the full RTM. Right, Lois? We're not,
No hybrid for the full RTM. We don't have the technology in place to do it.
we can.
So it's either
This isn't
virtual
even
or-
a- This isn't
Virtual or
even a
in
true
person.
hybrid meeting tonight because
Mm-hmm.
people can't see each other.
yeah.
So that we won't be ready till the fall in the auditorium for a hybrid meeting.
Oh, well, in that case, I thought that we'd worked some of that out, but never mind. Yeah, well, in that case, I'll just note that if it isn't voted, if it is voted, then we'll do it hybrid. We'll have to do a
I
hybrid.
don't know that we can do, we can't do it in the auditorium.
Not a hybrid, I didn't mean that, virtual.
Yeah, we have
I
to
meant
do
virtual.
Or in person.
Yeah,
Right. So, yeah, if we're doing in person, I mean, just because there are some of us who still are a little bit cautious for various reasons, can we have like certain areas, I know we all like to be in a district in that, but what precautions are we doing? Can we have an area that has a little bit more space spread out for people who are not wanting to sit within the area?
Lois and I measured, Lois and
yeah,
we want to talk about.
Lois is,
we include the balcony.
and that, yeah.
So Mike and I looked at the rows and things, and the way we looked at it, if we have the guests go up into the balcony, we can have like 5 rows per district, and just on the back of an envelope, what we said was the first row could be everybody who wants to sit together and doesn't care, the second row could be blank, the 5th row could be blank, and the 3rd and 4th would be spaced, like 3 seats apart. And we figured, and there are 22 seats in row, so we figured that was enough space to allow people, we hope, to feel comfortable whichever way they go. And it's up to this group,
Yeah.
really, if we want to recommend that we do that, or do we just keep it the way it is now and let people, just figure it out for themselves. I have no feel for how other people feel about wanting space or not wanting space, or even attending, but that's a separate issue.
Well, I'll speak out. I want everyone to feel comfortable, even if it might be a majority or minority of people, especially on a budget vote, which is not, a 1, 2, 3 meeting like our last one was.
Jack, we can't hear you very well. Could you get closer to the mic?
Usually people don't complain that they can't hear me.
Thanks, Adele.
I'd like to recommend that we do what Lois and Mike recommended, because I want everyone to feel as comfortable as they can be in this meeting. So, and it's not going to put anybody out if we do 5 rows. And if it's a minority, fine. If it's the majority, fine. Don't care, don't need a survey. We just should be cognizant to make people feel comfortable.
Right.
Lois, correct me if I'm wrong, but depends on how, if the governor requires virtual, we don't have a choice. If the bill is extended and people have a way, are allowed to vote remotely, we will not have a choice other than to do it virtually.
Fine.
I don't think so. We can do it in person.
Pardon
Why
me?
wouldn't we why can't we do it in person? I don't think the bill is gonna say you have to do it electronically.
No.
I think we have to do one or the other. I haven't read anything that says
Technologically,
that-
we have a problem trying to do a
Well, I
hybrid.
think Mike's asking a different question. Mike's asking, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, does
Mike
the
is
bill,
asking
does the bill
if-
say we have to offer a continue to offer a virtual option? Or just
No, it
that
doesn't
we have the right to offer a virtual option? Is it the obligation or the right?
We don't know yet how they're going to vote it. The way it stands now, it's not a requirement. You can do it, but you don't
So I
have
guess
to.
then the question is, if they do allow continued virtual voting, do we want to do the meeting virtually, or do we want to do it in person? I think that's the question we haven't asked yet in this
Right.
room.
Okay.
So
So what's the sense of this room?
what would you like to do? I'm the moderator. This is where I get to be moderator. Sit squarely in the middle and smile at all of you and say, come, talk to me.
Well, there is the option of Krista of sending another survey monkey to people who we know.
No.
No, because then it's majority rules and it puts the minority in an uncomfortable situation. I've said, I enjoy my virtual meetings because people who are not necessarily in town, look over here, or have other obligations can participate. And this is a budget vote. And I think that when it's on your computer screen, as opposed on the big screen over there, I think people tend to focus more on the budget numbers that are going to be there. No scientific or anything that says that I'm right or wrong, my own personal feelings. But obviously, I will defer to what the group wants.
So, look, can I have
Patty's got a question.
Patty, yeah.
Just make a point. I mean, I've been in some in-person meetings now as we've started to go through Parks and Rec, had an in-person meeting, the commission. The other day I was in an in-person meeting today. So I'm not personally against in-person meetings, but I will say, if this is an in-person meeting and it's our first meeting back and it goes as long as it did, the last budget meeting, I wrote down the number of people that started to get off the meeting before the final vote. And it was a surprisingly sizable amount. And so if there was a way we could try and be, I know we have a lot to cover, but a little bit more efficient with that. Because, I mean, I kind of feel like we lost some new people on the RTM who hadn't yet had the wonderfulness of being all together in the RTM with us and doing a long budget meeting like that. And then they were like, I'm done, I'm out. I mean, Mike Wheeler, your son probably felt that way. He didn't come back. So I would just say, if there's a way that if we are in person, we try and be cognizant of the time we are keeping all of these people together.
I can read just the charts and leave, Patty. Patty, I'm going to be very honest with you. I can read the charts and leave. If somebody's not willing to listen to the budget, then I don't know they were rightfully on the RTM to begin with. So while I hear you, I am not sympathetic. This is the most important meeting of the year. This is why the governor decided that April 30th was the cutoff, because he knew every town does their budget in May. And that's why he wanted in-person meetings. Look, if somebody can't spend time on the budget because they don't have interest and they're not on the RTM, we have many other quality people in this town to take their spot who may be. So I'm sorry for cutting you off, but
a suggestion. I know how hard you work, and I always take notes at every meeting, and I'm always there to the end, and I vote on it. Just don't take it personally. This is involving everybody. It's not just you. It's just, if there's a way, I'm just thoughtful of the fact that it's the first meeting where everybody is back. So I like the fact that we can spread them out. And thank you, Mike and Lois, for going through the auditorium and figuring, here's one row where you could be together, another row, here's another, row. So those are all constructive things, just thinking about the future.
Well,
I'm done.
I have my suggestion to you is that, that we split the baby, excuse me. We have face-to-face if we have to, because they don't vote hybrid, they don't extend it. And because of technological reasons, if they do vote it, then I think we have to do virtual. Because we don't have the capabilities, I understand, and I will double check that because
I agree with that statement, Seth. You keep putting virtual, you keep putting hybrid in.
I meant virtual. In other words, you're either, if they allow it, if they allow virtual, then I think we would have to do that because
why?
I'm not sure, because we don't have the ability to be able to technologically to be able to run both virtual and face-to-face at the same
I don't understand why you're
time.
making that connection to if they allow us to do electronic voting, I don't understand why you're making the leap to say, well, since we can't do virtual, we therefore have to do, excuse me, we can't do hybrid, we therefore have to be virtual. We still have the option of making a decision to do it live. And that's what the discussion is.
Yeah,
I will make a motion.
You do.
We can vote it down, and I'm not sure how I'll vote, but let's formalize this. I will make a motion that we have the budget meeting in person.
Can I?
Okay,
Can I make a suggestion?
do we have a second?
I'll second it, but can
Okay,
I
fine,
add?
now, discussion.
So,
Teresa.
I'm happy
Speak
to
up,
do it in
speak
person.
up, because this is important, so.
I was just putting it out there so we could
No,
have the
I
discussion.
I feel like we're forgetting something we can all do. I mean, I agree with you, because sometimes I think our meetings last longer than they should because of technological problems. And the budget meeting is important, and I'd hate for it to get caught up in technology problems. If we do it in person, why don't we suggest people have to wear masks? I mean, there are still places around town and other towns where, you know, there are certain places I go where they still require you to wear a mask because the people who own the business want that. So if we have people who are uncomfortable, you know, in person, maybe telling them that we are all going to wear a mask will make people more comfortable going in person.
If I might add to that, I think right. I think that part of the situation here is that this bill will allow hybrid meetings should the town desire to go there. Because we don't have the technology.
Virtual meetings.
What?
Or hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid, so we can have in-person and hybrid
And
at the same
people on
time.
the, yeah.
But we don't have the technology now. So that doesn't mean that we have to go virtual. It just means that we can't go hybrid
That's
at
right.
this time. So I would support what Michael's said, but with the amendment to it, that the seating arrangement that Lois and Michael worked out be implemented at that meeting, as well as,
Jack,
Just, excuse me, Mike, can we,
Can I respond?
just one at a time, please?
We lost our note taker, so I wanted to ask
Oh.
if you could pick up from Mark, because he's left us, and I don't know if he got disconnected, but we have no one taking minutes right now.
Well,
Okay.
well, it's being recorded, right?
Everything's
Guys,
nice
yes.
to me. I will.
no, this is being recorded, right?
It is
Yes.
being-
Okay, well,
For the
then,
minutes, so.
yes, so for the minutes, he can see the recording and, yes.
right.
Okay, and I'll just take them and share them with okay.
Very good,
Keep the
okay.
reset on.
Now, back on the subject, you're okay, Mike, you didn't have anything on, you were just giving us,
Right.
okay, thanks. Frank?
We'll switch spots.
I guess you know that I'm never in favor of delay. I want to always move forward. However, in this case, since after the legislature closes and we get the reading of what Hartford is doing to us, Seth has the ability to call this group together at a special meeting. And at that special meeting, we'll have the facts. And we can thrash it out and nail it down then. So we're dealing with too many variables here
I guess I don't
for to
hear,
do anything tonight.
I don't hear the variable though, Frank. I'm sorry.
The variable is what the
Respect.
state decides to do to us.
But I'm not sure, in my mind, in my motion, that's not relevant. We have the option.
Well, that's right, we certainly, we could do it your way. But when we do have the facts, we will be solidly based as to what we're going to do.
Okay, I don't see it that
No.
way, because the reality is, if the state lets us do it virtually, we then have the option to do it virtually. Right now,
Because you have a statement that if, and then we have the option. I want to remove some of those variables when we make a decision, when we discuss it and make
Okay.
a decision.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Others? Okay, yes, Lois, and I see
I
what,
just,
yeah.
I want to support what I think Michael was saying, which is that if the state doesn't allow us to do it, then there's no go.
that's
And
my
no-
point, Lois, thank you.
If the state allows us, I think that's what we're discussing, and that's what we're trying to vote on.
If, But
Yeah.
let's go back to this. Wait.
Wait, I've got.
I'm letting Lois
Wait a
go.
minute, I got Adele and then Jack.
Okay.
Adele?
I guess my point of view is that if the state allows us to continue to meet virtually, so we have the choice of the two types of meetings, then I think we should go to the RTM and ask the RTM members what they think. If they're ready to go back to in-person, or if they want to stay virtual, honestly.
Okay, thanks. Jack?
I was just going to say, my understanding of this bill is that they want to be able to have, because there's been such public participation in the virtual meetings, because people can sign on, they want to know that if we go back to an in-person, that hybrid would be allowed to go, including voting. But if we don't have the technology in the auditorium, which we do not have, then we don't have that capability, so we could still do in-person and just not have a hybrid meeting. This bill is to allow hybrid meetings, not foster it upon people.
Correct.
That's my interpretation. So, again, I haven't read the full bill that passed the House, but I think we could do, I don't think that they're gonna tell everybody that they have to do, every meeting in the future has to be hybrid, because, you know, Darien is a little better off town than some others, and I don't know that some of the small towns could afford to do
I
that.
don't think the bill is about telling them that they have to. I think it's the question is whether people will still have the option to.
Right.
Which goes back to why, again, just, Frank, I didn't mean to cut you off before, but
Okay.
in my mind, the question, or at least what I put out there, we could all vote it down, and that's fine. If I'm in the minority, which again, I completely respect. But to me, I am proposing that we have the meetings in person again. And it really has almost nothing to do with what the state does on Friday or Saturday, whenever they do it.
Well, I'll read you.
And I may completely be in the minority, but that's why I put it up here to debate and vote.
Fine.
Lois had her hand
That's
up
what it's
already.
all about.
Lois might have
I'll
something.
take a moment just to read you what's on the table. And I'm excerpting it because this thing goes on, but it says it says summary. Under the state's Freedom of Information Act, public agencies must generally make their meetings other than executive sessions open to the public. Current law allows these agencies until April 30, 2022, to hold meetings that are accessible to the public through electronic equipment, that is to say by phone, video, or other conferencing platforms, or electronic equipment combined with an in-person meeting called hybrid meetings. This bill removes the sunset date, okay, and allows public agencies to continue holding remote and hybrid meetings as long as they comply with the requirements under existing law. So that's what the Senate has to still vote on, because otherwise, you know, that's where it is now. That's where it sits. It just essentially extending the, as they say, the bill removes the sunset date. So it just keeps going, and it has no, at this point in time, has no sunset date.
Lois had a question.
Yeah, now I've got hands. I'll get Lois and then Teresa.
No, I was pointing out that I saw Lois's hand up.
Okay, Lois. I'm sitting here. It's like,
I can see
you
that.
want to be where I am, folks. I got screens all the way around me. Go, Lois.
I just want to say there's another paragraph in the bill that talks about voting. And it talks about that if you do it electronically and you don't have, it's not unanimous, then you have to do a roll call, which is exactly what we're doing.
Right.
So it doesn't allow for the electronic voting, which is the other piece that you need. Not only do they allow the meetings, but they allow for electronic voting, which is the other piece. But, you know, to me, the meeting's in 2 weeks. People that need to, you know, if we want people to go back for an in-person, we need to tell them right away. And if not, if it's, you know, anyway, we need to figure out, and I think it's our responsibility as the Rules Committee to figure out what we're going to recommend, however we all vote. and go. I don't think there's a lot of time to debate and, and wonder what the committee wants to do. And I also support what Jack said. It's go to the minority that this isn't a popular vote. It's, how do we honor most people, as many people as possible attending and voting on the budget, because that's the goal.
In a comfortable environment.
Which,
The piece I'd add to all that.
which you guys did the work on.
Yes.
I think the other
Yeah,
point,
that's
which has
great.
been kind of a theme through some of the debate points, Jack's point as well as Lois's, and certainly in mine, is that, and maybe a little bit contrary to Adele, to your point about polling the RTM, I think we as the Rules Committee have to look at the quality of the meeting. And if we think the quality of the meeting is better to be in person, then I think that's what we should be debating here. Again, I may be in the minority, but that's what I'm putting out.
Well, you
And
put it on the table,
and
Michael,
so you want to have a
that's
quorum,
what it's all
right?
about, yeah.
You want people to come, and if that's part of the polling, you get a better idea if you're going to get a quorum, and people do indeed feel comfortable.
Well, just in
Yeah.
case we don't, just so everybody understands, because we still have a June meeting, but if we do not properly vote or reject these budgets, the budgets revert back to the prior years or the current year's operating budget, and none of the capital is approved. So, just so that people are aware of that.
All right.
Jack, can we vote in June if something gets messed up in 2 weeks, or does we have to vote in May? We have to figure it out in May.
No, we just have to
No.
make sure that it's, and then the legislative body would continue to meet until we come to an agreed upon budget. So if we don't have a quorum, so we can't vote in May, we have a heck of a long meeting in June, because in June, we're going to have the Park and Rec issue. We're going to have 1.3 million in bonding for this current year's budget, and we will have presentations on 3 schools and the appropriate bonds for each of them. So you want to put a budget meeting on there, Patty, even I'm leaving that.
Well, we have a special meeting, I think, to settle this, but, okay, others? Okay, are you ready to vote?
Could you repeat?
And then, we'll have Michael, yes.
Mine is simple. I've moved that we, and I'll
That's
try
right.
to add Jack's amendment into it, if Jack
Okay.
correct me if I don't have it accurately, that we make the next meeting of the RTM an in-person meeting, and that we do it with the seating plan, the spaced-out seating plan that Mike and Lois have identified. And if someone wants to add the mask requirement to that, please do. I'm okay with that.
I think Teresa did, so we might as well throw masks
And
in there.
require that people be masked.
Okay.
I'll second it.
There we gotta say, we brought Teresa in with that one.
Teresa seconded that. I
All right,
saw
good.
that.
All right, other questions? Ready to vote? No votes, please? I have, okay. One hand will do, Frank, thank you.
We
It's
only get to
confusing
count
enough.
Mike once.
I have-
Please have that.
I have 1,
Count me
2,
once.
3, 4, 5 no votes.
No, you have.
No, wait, I counted you twice, I'm
you
sorry.
have 4 no.
Four no votes.
What about Ann and Mark? Do you need to
And
hear from
then,
them?
that's so far. Now what, how do we connect with, who's AR?
Ann.
Ann, yeah.
And Mark?
And Mark was on for
Mark
it.
was
Was
on a
on,
minute
and
ago.
then he's off again.
Oh,
Yeah,
it looks like he's on, but.
he was
Just
on.
me.
Oh,
No.
all right,
Should we do it as a roll call vote? Given the complexities of this?
yeah, it looks like that's, what we've gotta do. All right,
A question for the minutes.
so RO is Rolf, right? I'm just trying to
Can I
figure.
ask a question for the minute?
Yes, yes.
So for that motion,
Yes.
writing it down, and we were talking about the spread out seating program.
Yeah.
But was requirement of masks included or not?
It was included.
It was? Was
Was.
it a yes?
Yes, that's yes. Because there was an amendment accepted by the motioner to add masks and to add the seating that Lois worked out, and Michael.
And do we have a way we would enforce that?
No, I'll lay it out and,
Well, who has gun
That's what do
permits?
right.
Yes.
All right.
As
Mark-
not required in town hall.
Mark-
Just
No.
FYI.
Yeah, I know that, but
We-
if it increases the attendance because of it,
I think it decreases the attendance because of it.
I think Mike is right, that's why I was hesitant.
I agree, Mike, I think it decreases it.
So just to play Robert's rules for a second.
Yes, sir.
First of all, we should vote on my amendment to
My motion.
Michael's motion to implement the seating. So why don't we take a
Well,
vote on that?
Michael
No,
accepted
no,
and.
No, we still should
It makes more
vote.
sense, given the points that have come up. I'm
And
willing to
then-
say, let's do it mine, and then we can.
And then
do
All
we'll
it.
right,
do the
okay,
mask and
so
we'll do
do I
that,
have
and
a
then we'll have
second
it.
for Jack's motion on the seating? Amendment to the motion. We have the motion on the floor, and that's just a plain old,
Lois
Lois
second.
seconded Mike.
and Lois seconded.
Or, Jackson.
Okay.
Okay, Lois seconded, so now we've got Jack. Now, do we want to, does
All we're
the,
doing is voting on who's in favor of implementing the seating that
Right.
Lois and Mike worked out at an in-person meeting.
right. Okay, now, I don't see,
Mark says he's on, but he's not. I'm calling him to see if he's.
I-
Mark,
on.
all right, we can hear you now.
I am.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I've been on the whole,
Okay.
and I've been on the whole.
Oh,
whole-
I don't see you on the screen, that's why I didn't know you were there.
He's on COLA too.
Oh, my iPad ran out of battery, so I'm on the phone. I need someone to restate the motion and then the additional, motion on the motion. In a succinct way.
okay,
The motion, I made the motion, this is Michael, that we hold the next meeting in person. Keep it simple.
I got that.
Then Jack made an
And I'll say
amendment,
Teresa seconded that motion.
and then Jack amended it with,
Teresa second.
And then I amended that at the in-person, at the in-person meeting, that we implement the seating plan that was developed by Lois and Mike in the auditorium. And so that's what's up for vote, and that was seconded by Lois.
all right.
But where the requirement
All right,
of
there-
the mask,
No,
Then-
that's.
No, wait, no.
That's not here now.
Patty,
Stop.
That's our next one.
I'll get there, just trust me on this, folks, all right? So, is there any debate on Jack's amendment?
I just have a question.
Yes, a question.
With this
Teresa.
seating, I'm sure Lois can hear me. With this seating, because when we're in person, I know it was so long ago, we sometimes forget. When we voted, we'd stand up, yes or no, and our district chair would take our vote. If you've got people sitting up in the balcony and they are all from different districts, how are we doing the votes?
that wasn't the.
Go
That was
ahead,
guessed.
Lois,
It's gonna be set up
wait,
so
everybody
each
stop.
district
I'll
within
I'll
a
have,
section.
excuse me, it's Lois's plan. Lois, go ahead and explain how you worked it out.
The RTM members would be in the full auditorium, in the main floor. The people in the balcony would be the guests.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Other questions for Jack's amendment? You're just waving in? Okay. All right, she's not. Okay, good. All right, so we're ready to vote on the amendment? Okay, are there any, now there's two, who is?
No, we're only no votes on the
Yes,
amendment.
that's right, yeah. I'm just looking, I've got, do I have Ralph?
No, he's a guest.
He's not a member.
All right, and C is,
Mark.
Mark, and he can say that he's in favor orally.
all right, okay.
We know his voice.
Okay, Mark. Here we go. Are there any no votes on the amendment? I see none. Abstentions?
I'm going to abstain because I don't believe that the RTM has the authority to, and this isn't my statement on masks or not, but I don't know how the whole mask thing goes and who would enforce that, so I'm abstaining for that reason.
Okay, Patty, we're not voting on masks, we're only voting on a seating. We will be addressing masks next.
Yes, that's coming next.
She can still abstain, but you're.
But you're more than
Yes,
welcome
yes,
to
yes.
abstain, yes.
So, do you want, do you
Okay,
want to?
so I have no problem with seating layout.
Okay, fine, so
No.
that's a yes, or, it's not an abstention. Okay, so I see no no's and I see no abstentions.
So.
So the amendment passes.
So
So
now, we're
Jack, thank
having
you for this.
an in-person meeting with implementing the seating arrangement worked out by Lois and Mike. I should be starting saying Mike and Lois also, so fair is fair.
No,
I know
should do it
that it doesn't matter.
Yes.
And so now, the next motion to this amendment was Teresa's amendment that people be required to wear masks, to which I will second so we can now have discussion on it.
Well, all right.
That's right.
All right, fine. Are there questions on Teresa's motion?
I think people should have the right to wear a mask if it makes them more comfortable, but not the obligation, and which is consistent with what town hall rules are.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah,
I-
if it's,
I'm sorry.
question that the motion on the floor, that you require the,
Is an amendment to add a mask requirement to the already amended motion.
it's a requirement, got it, thank you.
Yep. Okay, Frank?
I would be in favor of the motion, in that it would give an element of security for people who are in doubt as to whether to come or not. And that we should proceed in that way, and not necessarily honor the mask deniers who would, fiercely say, I'm not going to wear a mask because freedom. Now, this is a town, and it's something that's important to get people to have the confidence that their health will be protected when they attend the meeting.
Thanks, Frank. Others? Okay. Yes, Teresa?
I agree with Frank, because look again. I mean, it's interesting how before we were talking about wanting to do it virtually so that people could feel comfortable and safe. Requiring people to wear masks, regardless of whether or not this building is mask optional, this building isn't having meetings with 100 people in the same room together. So I don't think it's unfair of us to say masks are required, because we want all 100 of our members to feel safe if we're coming in person. So that's just, I wanted to add.
Thank you. Others? I don't see any. Okay, ready to vote. No votes, please. And this is on the amendment. Okay, this is on the mask amendment.
Mask requirement.
Mask requirement. I shortened it. Yes, the mask requirement.
To say it another way, a no vote indicates that you are against requiring
Requiring
masks at the meeting.
Correct.
Just to be clear, requiring attendance of an in-person meeting, purely not requiring a mask if there is an in-person meeting.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, because it's
That's
it's amending the motion.
right.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Ready to vote? Okay, no votes, please.
Mark is a no.
All right, and I have Mr. Castello as a no.
A no vote, repeat again.
The no vote,
is saying that you are not in favor of requiring masks at the meeting. So.
It was your position a few minutes ago, Mike.
Right.
That's fine.
You were a
Yes.
no a few minutes ago.
Yeah, yes.
Because you convinced me.
Michael, I was appreciated that you said that.
Thank you. He sold me and he's not voting.
all right, I'm going to start the no votes again. May I have the no votes, please? I have 1, 2, I have Mike Castello and Mike Wheeler and
Mark.
And Mark.
Mark said he was.
Oh, and
against.
Mark, and Mark Adeletta.
Just 3.
Okay, 3. 3 noes. And we did a roll call, so.
No,
the
we have
motion-
abstentions.
And abstentions, please.
I'm abstaining.
We have an abstention from Jack Davis. Okay,
I'm not.
so, oh God, I sort of lost count here. I think the motion passes.
Yes.
You got,
So
here's what I
those-
got.
So,
Three no's, one,
yeah, the motion passes, so the whole motion now stands at having an in-person meeting with seating arranged by Lois and Michael, and
That's why you
with,
can use Lois's name first.
and with masks required.
Can we say this, and space seating, so that Mike and my name is not
Oh,
really.
This will be known famously as the Schneider Amendment. All right.
Mike's gotta be in on this too. No,
It's the
seriously.
Schneider-Wheeler Act.
Yeah, right, well, if it doesn't work out, we're going after Schneider and Wheeler.
Okay, so we're now going for the full motion as amended. Are there any comments, questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
I tried to get this in before I got disconnected. So what we're voting on is whether, if allowed by the state, whether or not to hold an in-person meeting, regardless of whether or not hybrid is allowed because, and regardless of whether or not we have the capability.
I'll relieve you of this right away.
So allowed in person, you will hold it in person regardless of our technical capability.
No,
I think that's overcomplicating it, Mark.
Yes.
I think it's simply saying regardless.
no,
If the state allows person, you
Yes,
will hold it in
No.
regardless of any outside circumstances on virtual.
I'm not sure I heard what he
Yeah, the word
said. Now, let me just, all right, let me just
Statement.
state again what the motion is. This is a motion to have the budget meeting at the RTM in person,
Period.
period. Amended,
If allowed.
amended.
No, that part's not needed, Mark. That part is not needed in my motion.
No, but your motion was amended.
No,
but-
not the amendment. Mark went on about if the state.
Oh, I
That's
got
not
you.
relevant.
No, correct.
My motion was really simple.
Yes.
And we've got the 2 amendments, which make perfect sense.
Yes,
But my motion was very simple, was to have the budget meeting in person.
right. Regardless,
Okay, let me change the motion. Not, so don't qualify whether it's a meeting or not, because we made the motion.
Correct.
To hold the people in person, regardless, make the motion the whole.
correct.
Wait, that it's in person with, masks and with special seating.
Yes,
That's right, as amended, yeah.
absolutely.
As amended.
Both amendments passed.
So we're holding this meeting in person, regardless of whether the state allows it or not.
No, it doesn't have anything to, no, it just is, it's a very straightforward statement, Mark. It's, the meeting will be held in person.
Mark, if
It has nothing to do with the state.
Mark, if I might restate it another way.
Okay. I
Even,
agree.
Mark, even if the state allows us to do a virtual meeting, we are opting to do an in-person meeting with the 2 amendments added on.
That's right.
Got it. Thanks very much. I was looking for state guidance here, getting done. Got it. Thank you.
We threw the state, no, no.
We're trying to.
We're not listening to the state.
But on the other hand, if we reject this motion, in other words, we don't want in person, then we are subject to what the state does.
Correct.
Right.
Like, let's get through this level first, and then you'll.
That's right.
Okay, so, let's see, where were we here? The motion passed.
No, we haven't voted.
All right. So we're now voting on the full motion. Okay, is
Fully amended
everybody ready? Okay, good. So, no votes, please.
Lois,
No.
I have,
Lois,
I have
Adele,
Lois and
Mark.
Adele,
And Mark,
And Mark.
and Mark,
And
and
Patty.
Patty.
and Patty. Okay, abstentions. Thank you.
Good move, Jack.
Were there any?
I see none. Okay, and the motion passes. All right. Next.
Good night, Irene.
We have to set the agenda now.
Oh.
See, we have this meeting that we did, we're gonna have an agenda. And I refer you to the draft warning that I sent out just for ease of reference. On there, the first 5 items are the same.
No, they're not.
Yeah, up through consideration and action.
No, the agenda would now read the intro, then 2211 being, which you have down as number 7 on the proposed agenda.
Right.
That becomes 2211 and is the first thing on the first resolution to be addressed.
Right, we do the introduction first,
Then
then-
2211.
and then what, you wanna
Which is the
call?
appropriation for the 2.9 million from the
No, no.
unassigned balance.
So we'll put consideration and action after the introduction? No. We'll put the consideration and action, and then we'll do introduction. Then we go to 2211, and primary on that is F and B.
Right.
And then we go to
12.
2212A, and that is also primary F and B with others.
I would list every committee
I will,
that's there.
yeah, I will. Then the next will be 22-12B, and that is the Selectmen's, and that would be F and B again with other committees reporting out on areas of concern to them. The next will be 22C, and that's the education operating budget, and that is education primary, F and B secondary. Then the next is 22D, total appropriation, and that's just F and B. And then the next one is 22-12E, which establishes the mill rate, and again, that's F and B. Then authorizing the borrowing of up to 5 million, and that is F and B. The next is 22-12G, and that's other appropriations, and in all cases, that's F and B primary, and then Public Works will speak on everything up through the parking lot capital fund, And then Park and Rec will talk about recreation, and I'll ask if any others have got anything to say, but I would think that would do it. Then we've got 12-13, which is the appropriation of 55.6 million, and that is F&B. And then we've got,
Adjournment.
that's it.
Adjournment.
That's it, and then we'll do an adjournment. Is everybody, Mark, do you have that?
I got it,
Oh, that's terrific.
One
Yeah,
thing is,
Michael.
This meeting, we generally have a lot of visitors who want to see if their budgets pass, and they're going to be up in the balcony. But this meeting will be televised live on TV 79, and they will be able to see it gavel to gavel. So there is no, unless they have a strong desire, there is no, they won't miss anything by not coming to town hall to see the vote. It'll be televised live on TV 79. Lois?
Yeah, Lois?
Mike, a question for you, Mike. If somebody, and Seth opens up to the public or to people, I mean, the question is where do the Board of Finance people sit? That's the question. But secondly, if somebody in the public wants to make a statement, because we do allow that, do we have a mic to pass around upstairs in the balcony, or do we ask people to come down and do our,
I'll have to ask Jim Cameron that, whether we'd have to have somebody come down, or we have one of the
Portable.
wireless mics
Yeah.
up in the balcony.
Okay, that would be great if we could, because then we'd cover the Board of Selectmen and all those other people, but that's up to Seth, if we want to handle that.
I will take that on in consultation with the outstanding members of the Technology Committee.
And I will
Remember,
tell
Mark,
you,
you're still on this committee.
in the past, at our last in-person meeting, I spoke with the First Selectman, with the chair of the Board of Finance, as well as the chair of the Board of Ed. There really is no reason at this point to give their report to the RTM, because we're really taking the Board of Finance's budget. It's not theirs anymore, it's the Board of Finance's budget. We've all done our work, and it's really now our budget. And the charter says that F&B is the liaison for the Board of Finance. There's no reason for them to add anything to it. We have more than adequate committees that have done their job and will be able to report. So if you need me to call them all and say, stay up there and be quiet, I have no problem calling them and telling them that.
Well, I would be happy to, although out of courtesy, despite
You're allowed
Seating
to,
is not
but
out of courtesy, I usually ask if they, kind of stare them down and say, you got anything to say, So,
I'll speak to Duke and the others just to make sure
yeah,
that
so I
at this time.
understand that what the game
Right,
is.
there's
fine.
no real reason to
Yeah.
have a conversation.
All right, can I have a motion to pass this agenda, please?
Chris has got it.
With the assignments?
Chris has-
What?
Just one item, and Lois, you alluded to it when we were talking about seating. As we have many members who have not attended a live meeting, they don't know how to vote, even though that's just make sure that process is explained to the members.
I can see this will be I'm gonna be testing Jack for length. I can see this right away. Because, there will have to be some discussion about, listen, this is how this works,
Could we send something out in writing on that for members?
Certainly. Certainly.
Just to bulletize the voting process?
You don't know how many new members there are in the last 2 years.
A lot.
A lot?
There
A
are.
lot.
Oh, it's,
20 more?
It's a large amount.
Out of
But
practice.
they first have to know that they have to find their district and where the districts sit. Because many of them have not been there.
We'll
to
have
know where
ushers,
they are.
yes. All right.
Masked ushers.
Yes. I think I asked for more. Did I get the motion for this agenda and for
Motion
the
to-
assignments?
I'll move the agenda.
And the assignments?
Yes.
Thank you. A second from Frank. Okay. Other questions? Ready to vote?
Wait, the motion.
Mark,
Michael did, Mark.
Mike Casalo.
And Frank seconded, Mark.
Frank
Thank
Kemp.
you.
All right. Great. No votes, please. I don't see any. Abstentions, please. I don't see it. The agenda for the annual budget meeting passes unanimously. Any new business? Thank you. Motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I think actually Joe Michelli beat you to it, but I'll take yours as a second.
See? Yeah.
Any no votes? All right, abstentions, I see none. Meeting is adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.